from all, to all, with all, for all, through all. We thank the gods of creation. We thank the ancestors. We thank the forces of nature. And we thank the earth. We thank them for their direction, their protection, their guidance, for keeping us, showing us, allowing us to know and enjoy life to its fullest, now and later.
Black people who once loved with the slow march of time. Time was ours to hold in the soft, love-warm chambers of our hearts. And once we, the Afro mommies and daddies of a sun world, would turn our strands of hair into antennas to tune in the juju madness and syncopated love rhythms of Africa. And we loved with time, and we took the time to love, and with the right time we loved, and we loved time after time. Will we ever love again? Will we ever love again? Will we really ever love again? Or will we just sit and rot away with the brighter tomorrows in the skag field, rat-cluttered halls of our minds?
Black people, what y'all gonna do? Black people, what y'all gonna do?
Will the real black people please stand up?
Let our rejoicing rise high as listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Listen to me now, yo, before Dr. Dre, there was Dr. James, welding cords around a copper frame. We sing songs, not for the accolades, to lift voices like a helicopter blade. High in the listening skies, my eyes glisten and tears drop down like rain. Not from the pain, from the joy of how far we came. My brainstorms are designed to celebrate our reign. Yeah, when you put it in perspective, the collective, monuments erected, continents affected, presidents elected, ancestors making moves with the music we've been blessed with. We use it to keep communities connected. Through harmonies, a harmony is collected. Reaping the fruits our foremothers invested. Lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, yeah, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, listen, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on. Sing a song, yeah, full of the faith that the dark past
must march on till victory is won. Till victory is won.
This is victory music. Come on, I hope you feel it.
Habari, and welcome once again to Our Story, the program that makes being black positive, relevant, desirable, and true to a lost nation in America. A program that speaks to the historic significance of the original people of the earth. Our Story Network takes pride in setting itself away from other programs that centers on entertainment or rhetorical mumbo-jumbo that misdirects your attention onto other things that causes you to exhaust your resources and renders you brain dead. It is Our Story who talks about commitment to you and your people. It is Our Story that champions the reestablishment of the black genius that once ruled the world. It is Our Story that focuses you in on the rewards of black advocacy, black activism, black involvement, and black power. It is Our Story that encourages survival of the black race and solicits your involvement to that end. Black folks must remember race first is the call of the day, and we as a people must. I say must take the pledge if we, the people of the original race, expect to survive. As I take the many lessons I have received over the years and reflect upon them by sharing these lessons with my brothers and sisters, I realize the power that we as a people possess for the most part has gone unnoticed. The masses of black folks who have been rendered lost and disenfranchised from the meaning and mission our creators intended for us to embrace is all but depleted. It is because of the mission and meaning of the life of our ancestors that I realize how blessed as black people we really are. What fascinates me are the many gifts I have been granted, which allows me to distribute the information onward to you. As always, that message begins and ends with the importance of blackness. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Greetings, friends, comrades, family, the inquisitive onlookers, and our beloved viewers. Welcome, welcome, and welcome to Our Story Network. We thank you for being with us this evening, and we trust you will take something of value away with you after the program. That is the aim and goal of Our Story Network, the network that leads the pack in modern day communications and ancient and modern education. I say ancient and modern education because of the many errors we have found in the description and interpretation of ancient records. The modern revelations by new black scholars have opened the window of discovery that has allowed the truth of knowledge originally disseminated by the black masters of education to flourish once again. This is one of the stumbling blocks that has kept black people from rebuilding their greatness and recapturing their birthright. People, listen to me. As black people, we have a rich heritage and an endless fountain of creativity that can and will pull us up from the ashes like the mythical bird called the phoenix. And why shouldn't black people be as virile as the phoenix? After all, black people have shown the vigor by showing strength and power over the years which endured enslavement. However, today, we as blacks must ask ourselves if we are living up to our ancestors' expectations? And are we living up to the sacrifices our grandparents died for over so that we may find a better day? After hearing the ruckus and moaning and groaning over everything from soup to nuts, I question whether or not black people have lived up to the expectations and sacrifices our ancestors and grandparents gave for our upgrades in living conditions. Case in point, the entertainment field. Black people contribute more than half of their earned and allocated dollars in support of this institution without considering black folks' station in this life. I reintroduce you to the Colin Kaepernick dilemma. Most of you know who Colin Kaepernick is and why he is unemployed. What many of you don't realize is black folks failed to raise to the occasion for Kaepernick, who has caused the NFL owners to rally around racism and close the door on black professional athletes using their bully pulpit to communicate the ills and transgressions of modern day society and the use this society employs from racism. And why not? Racism is as American as apple pie. I bring this to the forefront because many blacks are trying to do their part in continuing the march to freedom our ancestors plowed as the original fields of struggle for freedom. Because few blacks have mass media at their disposal, most blacks do not hear about the struggles of other blacks working the field for freedom. One of those struggles concerns Pastor Deliberaire Snell, senior pastor, First Seventh-day Adventist Church in Huntsville, Alabama. He is joined with several other ministers from Huntsville who have taken upon themselves the heavy lifting of sacrifice, struggle, and risk to encourage other blacks to take a stand. Here is his message.
Houston Texans, I'm blacking you out. The Atlanta Falcons, I am blacking you out. Washington, I'm blacking you out. Dallas Cowboys, I'm blacking you out. Titans, I'm blacking you out. 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 NFL, we're blacking you out.
In 2016, NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick engaged in a silent, non-violent protest. Colin Kaepernick simply decided to take a knee during the playing of the national anthem at NFL games. He did this to kind of raise awareness to the number of brown and black individuals that had been beaten or killed at the hands of law enforcement across this country. Since the end of last season, as a result of this protest, Colin Kaepernick has been unable to find employment in the NFL. I find that strange, seeing that the NFL has employed individuals that have been convicted of sexual assault, domestic violence, cruelty to animals, along with driving while under the influence. A number of NFL owners have come out and stated the reason they can't employ him is because of a fear of a backlash from sponsors or a certain segment of their fan base. And it's interesting that they've capitulated thus far to a certain segment of the fan base while fearing no backlash from the African American community. The African American community makes up 15% of the NFL's overall viewership. And I find it interesting that they've made the calculation that states that even though they're going to silence one who stood up for values that have meaning to us, they have an expectation that African Americans are still going to be there on opening day, watching and patronizing their product. My belief is simply this: if Colin Kaepernick was willing to take a stand for those of us who are non-celebrities that would have to interact with law enforcement on a day-to-day basis, if he is willing to take a knee for us, certainly we ought to take a stand and stand with him. I think it's important that we take some action steps.
As long as Kaepernick is without a job, we refuse to watch the NFL. We refuse to purchase any NFL paraphernalia endorsed by the NFL, and we refuse to engage in fantasy football.
As a church community, we commit 1 to 2 hours each Sunday for the next 17 weeks of football to pour in to our African American boys and girls. We will do this whether he is employed or not. Let's take the time that would normally be given to the NFL and give back to our boys and girls.
Spread the word to other men that we speak the language that the NFL responds to, money. Let us make it clear that since our lives matter so little to them, their product will matter even less to us.
We take a knee as Kaepernick did. We devote this season to prayer each morning, 6 a.m. for our youth, communities, local and government officials.
This is not a boycott, but a mancott, because this demonstration is not for boys, it's for men of strong conviction.
Now, we want you to know this protest is not anti-flag because people of color love the Stars and Stripes. It is not anti-American because people of color have loved this country even when this country has not loved us back. And this protest is not anti-veteran because we support those who have made sacrifices so that our liberties have been secured. This protest is to ensure the rights of all Americans, regardless of color or creed, to be heard.
Together we stand united against discrimination in all its forms. We're making a call to people of conscience, regardless of race, religion, or creed, who are able to recognize injustice and join us in this blackout. It is a call to all pastors, leaders, and churches, not just to look at what's happening as a black problem, but as an American problem.
We black out hatred. We mourn for our brothers and sisters in Charlottesville, Virginia. We pray for the healing of that community along with the healing of our nation.
Up through 2014, the NFL had what they call blackout policies. When a stadium in a particular city had failed to sell out all of its tickets, they would black out the game so it couldn't be shown on that local market. They would force the fans to the stadium to buy the tickets. Today, we're forcing the hands of the NFL. We're saying that there are some values that we have that matter and they count. And so NFL, we want you to know that we're going to black you out. I'm making a call to pastors, leaders, my brothers, all people of conscience, regardless of your race or your background, to join us in this blackout. I want to be clear that I'm a football fan. I played it most of my life growing up, and there's rarely a Sunday that I've missed in my adult years. But there comes a point in time where I've got to prioritize my convictions more than my entertainment value. And let me be clear that this thing is bigger than Colin Kaepernick. He took a stand for an issue that's uniquely valuable to African Americans. But tomorrow, it could be your liberties, your perspective, your worldview that's at stake. He is symbolic of all of us. Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
We're going to black you out. You're on the clock.
As we can see and hear, there are black people willing to fight for the cause of freedom. What is impeding the black movement and the black cause is the blacking out of information and acknowledgement of forces within the black communities by white-controlled media, local black organizations, and black folks committed to maintaining white supremacy. What you witnessed came from YouTube. And even YouTube can only do so much. The fact that YouTube has so much information makes it difficult to catch all of the pertinent information for black people in a timely manner, causing that information to get lost. This is where local boots on the ground, black organizations, are needed but are absent from the community because of the money grab the 501c3s create, which causes black causes and effect to cast its fate to the wind. In reviewing material available on YouTube, I found this next piece, which clarifies what blacks need to be doing in order to build a power base necessary to be competitive with white supremacy. I enjoy the way Mitchell Chance approaches and explains the role black people need to play in this fight for freedom. Racism and enslavement are one of the same. Mitchell goes on to give you a plain and simple explanation about the problem and the solutions. Here is Brother Mitchell.
What's going on, kings and queens? It's Mitchell Chance, the voice of revolution, exposing minds to truth. Now, I know you see the title, and you might be thinking, yo, Mitch is tripping out, but let me explain what I mean by this. First off, I applaud, celebrate Colin Kaepernick. I stand with Colin Kaepernick, and I will ride with and for Colin Kaepernick to the day I die for the way he stood up for his people. But as a people, we have a problem with wanting to boycott or protest institutions and organizations because of the injustices committed against an individual, as opposed to boycotting or protesting them because of the racism that is deep-seated in them and embedded in their culture. This makes our protests and our boycotts empty and non-progressive for our people. So just think about what we're talking about. We're talking about boycotting the NFL because they have not hired Colin Kaepernick. So we are in agreement that these owners, these 32 owners, are in collusion and that they are racist. But we're only going to boycott them if they don't hire Colin Kaepernick. So essentially what we're saying is, if you do something for us, we'll continue to support you even though we know you're racist. And this is why we should not boycott the NFL because of Colin Kaepernick. Not that we should not boycott the NFL, but we have to go past boycotting over an individual injustice and boycott because of deep-seated racism in order to make progress for our people. It's just like the boycott in 1951. Okay, so the bus company is inherently racist. They know it, they understand it. And they say, well, we're going to boycott until you let us sit in the front. But what do we really gain by sitting in the front? So the same company that's owned by the same racist people with the same racist drivers, with the same racist feelings, now, okay, we're going to boycott you for a moment, but if you do something for us, we're going to forget that you are racist. Now, if we have a problem with the NFL as black people, we should also have a problem with every black NFL player who did not stand with Colin Kaepernick. If we're going to boycott for him, let's not just boycott the NFL. Let's let those black athletes know that we are dissatisfied with them. Let's let them know that they don't have our support because they are helping a culture that is keeping Colin Kaepernick from getting a job, because if every other black player would have stood up, well, would have not stood with him, but would have kneeled or sat with him, this would not be a problem. But because those sorry black men did not want to be a part of the change, they are perpetuating it also. Now, so we got to get out of our boycotting because of an injustice to an individual and boycott because things, institutions and organizations or people are inherently racist. So look at this. We're saying that the NFL is racist because they won't hire Colin Kaepernick because he would not kneel for a song that celebrates killing enslaved Africans who were fighting for their freedom. But we're not boycotting or protesting because the culture is glorifying a song that celebrates the Africans being killed for fighting for their freedom. Look at that. So we're more outraged that a man can't get a job working for the racists than we are the fact that every time a football game is played, they play a song that celebrates the killing of our ancestors. Oh, this thing is a lot deeper than Colin Kaepernick. This thing is a lot deeper than just one individual having some kind of injustice committed against them. Listen, I love Colin Kaepernick and I love what he did, but it's more important for us to boycott the NFL or any sports company because they play the national anthem. It's important for us to boycott any black person who still wants to sing the national anthem, knowing that this song talks about the celebration of the killing of our ancestors for fighting for their freedom. We cannot boycott the NFL for Colin Kaepernick. We need to boycott the NFL because it's inherently racist. We need to boycott anything that has racism deep-seated in it, and not just because they did something. I love what they're doing in North Carolina. They're really going to shut down that store, the hair store, where the woman was put in the chokehold. Now, even though that was an injustice for an individual, we're really progressing with that because we're going to get that shut down, and that's not going to exist anymore. So we're not going to say, well, I know you choked her, but since you apologized, now we're going to spend our money with you again. And when we say we want to boycott if Colin Kaepernick doesn't get a job, all we're saying is we know the NFL is racist, but if they give us a bone, we're going to overlook your racism and we're going to continue to support you. So black people, whatever institution or organization that is inherently racist, that has racism deep-seated and embedded in its culture, we need not wait until an injustice happens for an individual and for us to realize how racist they are. And more importantly, we need not support them after we find out how racist they are and they just give us a bone to continue to get our money. Bottom line is we need all of our own stuff. And anything that does not help us to be self-reliant is not progress for our people. So any boycott or any protest that's not leading towards us starting our own NFL, starting our own hair stores, or starting our own bus system, any boycott or protest that's not leading towards that is an empty boycott and an empty protest. If we're going to protest racism, we got to protest all racism, not just when it affects one person. Remember, to love black, to buy black, and think black. I love y'all.
Mitchell points out racism and white supremacy needs to be attacked as opposed to trying to resolve the wrongful act upon a single individual or groups of non-white people as a goal of action taken to right an injustice. Mitchell's approach is an approach that addresses the core of the problem and not the illusion of the problem. Mitchell also points out the need for blacks to become involved as informed participants instead of emotional renegades. We are talking about the current state of black America. We are talking about the continued enslavement by reason of ignorance. Most of us are ignorant because we refuse to do the work necessary to free our mind, body, and soul. To free our thinking in order to sober our minds to enable us to continue the fight our ancestors and our parents pursued. These are the things I took into account when I authored my book, Our Story, The Original Holocaust. I would like to read a few excerpts from my book, beginning with chapter 12, entitled, Control and Destiny is in the Black Man's Hands. Bob Marley said in one of his many hits, "Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight. Preacher man, don't tell me heaven is under the earth. I know you don't know what life is really worth. It's not all that glitters is gold. Half the story has never been told. And now you see the light. Stand up for your rights." One of the many statements for black people to galvanize their position and their power around in order to take control of their destiny can be found in these lyrics. But as Willie Lynch has so often raised its ugly head, black people have opted out to take the easy road to perdition. The easy road is a road to everlasting punishment, better known as hellfire and damnation, simply because black people have allowed themselves to become creatures of habit, and unfortunately, bad habits at that. Now, don't get me wrong. Being creatures of habit is not a bad thing. The normal, natural course of life is habitual. But we are taking out of the life granted by the forces of creation at the point in time of creation, and not the crazed, mentally sick animal who has partaken of the forbidden fruits and continues to eat from that fruit. That forbidden fruit comes in many forms. Generally, animals obtain it through extreme conditions or eating or drinking substances that are inherently prohibited from their diet, but out of necessity for survival, partake anyway and suffer the consequences. This became apparent to me when I realized animals who knew a certain supply of water was poison but consumed it anyway because the animals were dying from dehydration. Now I'm going to go over to chapter 10, entitled The Trials and Tribulations of Humanity. As I relive the years of tragedy, both personal and through the eyes of others, I can see and hear the voices of the victims, their relatives and loved ones. I cannot help but remember what each one wanted from the exercise of finding justice. Humanity was the main consideration out of everything that transpired throughout my lifetime. Allow me to be more specific. Humanity means being humane, by being able to feel what the victim feels. Humanity meaning being human. The difference between being civilized and being a heathen. Which brings me back to the early Greeks who were denied admittance to the halls of knowledge, the original lodge of which the first requirement was a person had to have spirit or soul for admittance. To listen to the people talk about their loved ones was like listening to a band play three-part harmony on one note, like watching Harriet Tubman as she leads a group of runaway slaves across the Mason-Dixon line, like watching a child who is injured with severe wounds but doesn't utter a sound. The child just looks at you as if to say, "Aren't you going to help me?" What I experienced during my tenure in New Orleans was far worse than I experienced in Vietnam. Even in Vietnam, the enemy showed black compassion in the early years, and whenever blacks were captured, the VC would tell blacks about their need to be at home in America fighting their own war. Blacks were often reminded in Vietnam that the Vietnamese people did nothing to the black race. Whether you call it psychological warfare or trying to be an ambassador. The people of Vietnam were telling the truth. To see and hear my people call out for mercy, something whites have showed me that they know nothing about. Mercy or justice. Could it be black folks do not know the meaning of mercy or justice? I know I have found the general understanding of the term justice among the educated and legal practitioners. For them, it has an empty and hollow meaning. Justice, as defined by the educated, means only the completion of a process. That's right. No matter what the outcome, from arrest through indictment to trial and conviction and sentencing, or a not guilty verdict, the process has been completed and therefore justice has been served. When literally millions of black people firmly believe justice has some requirement of fairness and equality associated with the process. This causes me to relive over and over again the history of the 6,000 years black people have been and continue to be oppressed. And with the recent revelation of Donald Trump's fiasco, whites are openly resuming the racist posture whites exhibited between 1865 and 1965. For some reason, whites went into the closet after 1965 and tried to convince America and the world that whites were trying to be human. But Donald Trump has sounded the trumpet for whites to come out of the closet and resume business as usual without fear of reprisal. This is not new. This storyline has been played out before, many times before. Throughout European history, white folks have open periods of warfare and low periods of closet hating to gain an upper hand. The indigenous people of this continent can surely attest to this statement. The poor people throughout Europe can attest to the periods of time when whites could live among each other, and then times when whites needed to know which bloodline other whites came from in order to allow other whites to live. I have always found this amazing. The documented record of whites and non-whites always show whites being barbaric and non-whites always being able to coexist with others. There is something wrong with this picture. I want to go over to chapter 6, Ode to Steve Coakley. What keeps blacks behind is a fear of being alone. Since the enslavement of the black race, blacks have become dependent on white approval, white company, white brutality, and white insanity. Like the mentally and physically battered housewife or outside wife, the fear of being left alone and left on one's own is enough to continue to accept the pain and abuse by excusing the scars and laying claim to hope. When will blacks truly get enough of the insanity the white race freely gives the black race? The albatross hanging around the necks of the black race is constantly being confused with the phoenix, the mythical bird that died and raised from the ashes to again fly high in the sky. The problem with this thinking is, first, it is a myth. And secondly, black folks have hundreds of birds from black folks' own creation that the white race uses every day as their own symbols. This is a topic successful blacks avoid at all costs. To be black, you must love black. To be anything, to be black, you must embrace black. It is certain that one cannot embrace anything black while holding hands with the white enemy. The same is true when sleeping with the enemy. The taboo conversation blacks deny and disavow as nonsense. It is impossible to be black, to uphold blackness, or to save blackness if you are tied to any blood oath organization. You cannot be a Greek, a Mason, or a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Boule, or a number of secret societies that claim they don't exist but have sufficient documentation to prove they do exist. Blacks must recognize the difference in supporting the enemy and supporting your family's bloodline. I spent many years with Steve Coakley during the 1990s. Steve would vacation with my family in New Orleans. His children had an opportunity to spend time with their father away from the celebrity status Steve enjoyed while working. Steve's children could interact with children who were raised in the struggle. Both Steve's children and my children had a ball. This was a getaway that allowed Steve to decompress and rejuvenate his batteries. Steve's favorite mission was to poke a hole in the fence of black people's security mechanism that corralled the minds of black people by encouraging black folks to think for themselves. Steve's purpose in life was to teach the tools of research and to encourage other blacks to gain access to the knowledge for the purpose of sharing the knowledge for the salvation of the black race. Steve exposed everyone he touched to the knowledge of secret societies. Steve encouraged other blacks to give up the secrets of their societies for the exchange of freedom. Most blacks do not realize membership in secret societies are contracts into the Roman slave law, which is a contract for life. In fact, most blacks don't realize that membership in religious organizations are Roman slave law contracts for life as well. I don't know how many times I have sat at a funeral and heard about the perfect one who does not make mistakes. Yet, everything about them, including the clergy, shouts out, the God they believe in is all wrong. Recently, I sat at a funeral of a 28-year-old male who had been murdered in the streets after being called outside of a bar room. The word on the street was he had been hiding because of an armed robbery he performed on a drug dealer. Taking drugs and money from the drug dealer while allowing the victim to know who he was as he was robbing him. It is said this young man was also a drug dealer. After hiding for several months, it seemed to be a case of the robber becoming tired of hiding and running. I am told the first time he showed his face in the neighborhood was his last time in the neighborhood. Once he was seen, the victim, the original victim of the robbery, got word where he was and went to the bar to settle the score. One of the victim's partners went inside the bar to call the robber out of the bar because security kept anyone from coming in with a weapon. Once outside the door, he was quickly approached and shots were fired. The robber ran, and within 50 to 75 feet, the robber was shot dead. Once in the head, once in the back. The preacher talked about how this was horrible loss and questioned the time of departure, which the participants at the funeral, it was evident that everyone in the funeral parlor had no clue as to the rituals they were performing. It is seemingly religious ceremony that had nothing to do with the creators, but rather the programs given to slaves as if one was marking its territory for greater control over the lives people left behind. Now I'm going to go to another passage here, piece in the book. This one happened because of a email encounter that I had gotten involved with on some communications that was widely being participated in here in New Orleans by a number of well-known people. And it was instigated because of Terry Clay, who was reaching out to try to rally some support for a new project that he was introducing to New Orleans. My experience with Terry in the past spoke to the fact that Terry was basically a hustler, and that a lot of programs that he was involved in turned out and ended up being just that, a hustle. So this particular passage in the book is in response to people who were communicating through this email link about what Terry Clay had proposed and how people were reacting. Here, another reader on the email list decided to offer a contribution in an effort to better understand and assist in reaching clarity if possible. I really appreciated this intervention because my intent from the beginning was not to try to convince Terry Clay to join the team, but to get those who were reading the emails to understand that the black problem could only be resolved when black folks are willing to take a stand and fight for what they claim they want. There is no way, after 150 years of so-called emancipation, black folks should be still wandering around like a set of ragtag refugees without home or purpose. As I said many times, blacks have too many degrees for their problems to be as monumental as they are today. The only reason black folks find themselves in this condition is because black folks are being dishonest with each other. I tried to make that clear with the minister who weighed in on the conversation. You judge for yourself. Brothers, and I do mean brothers in the literal sense of the word. I have read both of the comments you have written, and I stand from the outside looking in. I mean, I stand outside as a person who is not privy to and of the backdrop that you speak about. It appears that there is truth and error to what you both are saying. Let me try to give you an example. The government assistance that you talk about is my tax dollar, parentheses, an African American brother, close parentheses, not handouts from any government elected official. Any money that is used to further the cause of my people and our community is welcomed by people like me. I know that there are far too few dollars that make it to our community because of the established system that we're allowed to be as African Americans. Brackets, by not voting or not voting our interests, close brackets, but changing what has been the cause of the politicians of our community at this juncture is critical. In a few years, we will have an opportunity to make changes to what we see structurally. My question is, how will we do it? Will we continue to point out the obvious problems, acting like solutions are non-existent? Will we continue to use literally shotguns to assassinate the incredible work that people like yourselves have been involved in for many years, literally changing countless lives in the process? Or will we find the boldness, courage, and faith to lay aside our ideological, philosophical, and even religious differences to build some synergy that will impact the communities we all love? You see, I am not naive enough to believe that I have all the answers. Neither do I feel myself to be intellectually astute enough to think I can't learn from someone else or hear from someone else. Brothers, people like me are looking for ways to help our community. I give my time, my money freely every year, looking for nothing more than a positive change and desperate situation of my people. You both appear to have some ideas of how we can do that. That's what I want to hear more of. Much love, Pastor D, pastor and teacher, Temple of Praise Ministries in Harvey, Louisiana. My immediate comment was, I found this to be a true compassion gesture for seeking out the truth. I responded to his inquiry the same way. Now, unfortunately, my response is going to be quite lengthy, and the fastest hour in television is rapidly coming to an end. But I truly hope that you enjoyed some of the excerpts from my book. I truly hope, if you haven't gotten your copy yet, that you will go out and receive your copy, because there is a lot of information, a lot of research, there is a lot of work that has gone into bringing about the work that I call Our Story, the Original Holocaust. If you're interested, you can pick up a copy at the Community Book Center, 2523 Bayou Road, Wayne's World and Sons, 2255 St. Claude Avenue. And if you're on the West Bank, Educator's Delight, 3501 Holiday Drive, Suite 405. Brothers and sisters, my entire life I've been serious about the struggle. I've been serious about freedom. I've been serious about black people. I think it's time that more of you become serious about that. Before I go, I want to just give a shout out to Hezekiah, who I've been reaching out trying to get in touch with, and sometimes I have to go through the media here to get him. So if you're listening, my brother, give me a call. I want to talk with you, and I'd appreciate it. Until we meet again, brothers and sisters, remember, you can find me on Mondays from 10 until 12 on Chuck Perkins' Chuck Wagon, WBOK 1230 AM. The number is up there. You can get in touch with me anytime. Please do, because this is how we present the information to you. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Stay strong, stay black, but most importantly, stay committed to blackness. Uhuru Sasa Umgawa.
Listen, with every voice to freedom is manifested. Come on, come on, come on.
Sing a song,
yeah, talk to
full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
come on.
Sing a song, full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun,
Facing the rising sun, come
oh,
on.
our new day begun.
It's a new day.
Let us march on
Yeah.
till victory
Yeah,
is
until victory is won. Come
won. Till victory is
This is
won.
victory music. Come on, I hope you feel it.
Yeah.